My name is Noah West. I served 6 years overseas, left a leg in a place no one in my family can pronounce, and came home thinking the worst was behind me. I was wrong. At Christmas dinner, my father set down his fork, looked across the table, and said, "You're a burden. Get out of my house." Everything stopped. Aunt Karen froze mid-sip. Tyler, my younger brother, stared at the table like he could disappear into the wood grain. My mom didn't even blink. She just kept slicing her ham, steady hands, like this was routine. I stayed still. My hand hovered over the gravy bowl, suspended like a glitch. I heard the clock tick. I felt my artificial knee lock under the table. "You heard me," my dad said. "You've been sleeping in that guest room for 6 months like it's a damn shelter. You don't work, you don't help, you just sit around like some moody ghost." I set the spoon down gently. "I'm recovering," I said, calm. No anger, just fact. He leaned back in his chair, snorted. "You were supposed to recover. You didn't. You just stayed." My mom dabbed her mouth with a napkin. "It's not good for the family, Noah. The tension." "Tension?" I laughed once, short. "Sorry if my missing leg's a downer on your holiday." "Don't twist this," my dad said. "You need to grow up, move on. You're not the only one who's been through stuff." That's when I realized this wasn't a slip. It was rehearsed. I looked around the table. Nobody spoke. Not my cousins, not my uncle, and not Tyler, the one person who used to have my back when we were kids. His mouth opened, then closed again, empty. I stood, my chair dragged across the floor. The sound scraped through the silence like a blade. "I get it," I said. "You want me gone." "You're not a child," my dad said. "Act like it." I walked out of the dining room without another word. My leg clicked with every step. I passed the fireplace, stocking still hanging. Mine said Noah in red thread. My mother stitched it when I was 6. Upstairs, I packed fast. Not because I was in a rush, because I didn't want to feel anything. My duffel was still under the bed, the same one I took to basic, the same one that came back with me. I threw in jeans, t-shirts, meds, charger, no photos, no souvenirs. Tyler came to the doorway. "Noah, don't." I didn't know he'd say that. You didn't stop him either. I zipped the bag. "What are you gonna do?" I slung it over my shoulder. "Whatever I have to." Outside, the cold slapped me in the face. The snow was heavy, wet, the kind that soaks through your boots fast. I stepped off the porch and didn't look back. The crutch sank into the slush with a dull crunch. Behind me, the house stayed lit. Warm, full of people who didn't speak up when it mattered. If you've ever walked away from people who called themselves family, hit that like button and subscribe. Because this story isn't over, not even close. The bus station was nearly empty. Just a tired woman with a stroller and a guy in a parka eating peanuts like it was his last meal. I bought a one-way ticket with the cash I had in my coat. No idea where I was going, just away. Away from the house, the table, the silence. I sat near the back of the bus, pressed my forehead to the cold window, and watched Christmas lights smear across the glass. My stump ached. The prosthetic had rubbed raw again. I didn't care. I welcomed the pain. It gave me something to feel besides shame. My phone buzzed. Tyler, a message. "Please just let me explain." I turned the phone off. I didn't want apologies. I wanted absence, quiet, distance. The bus rumbled through the night, cutting across snow-lined highways and frozen gas stations. Somewhere past midnight, we stopped at a diner. I didn't eat, just limped inside, used the bathroom, splashed water on my face. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. Dark eyes, beard grown out, shoulders hunched like I was bracing for a hit that never came. Back on the bus, I pulled my hood low and tried to sleep. I couldn't. Around 4 a.m., I pulled out the piece of paper I kept in my wallet. An address, handwritten in block letters, Elias West, 325. Rainview Road, my grandfather, my dad's dad. I hadn't seen him in 10 years, not since before my first deployment. He and my dad had a falling out, and suddenly we weren't allowed to visit him anymore. No one talked about it. But I remembered Elias. He used to take me out to the old beehives behind his cabin, said the bees were smarter than most people. They mind their business, feed their queen, work until they don't need to anymore, and when they sting you, they mean it. At 7, I thought it was cool. At 27, I realized it was a lesson. The driver nudged me awake at the next station. Last stop. I stepped out into a town that felt like the edge of a postcard. Quiet. Pale blue light. Snow that hadn't been disturbed yet. A gas station. A diner. A stretch of road leading into woods. Rainview Road was 3 miles out. I walked. Every step drove the crutch deeper into the snow. My leg burned, then numbed, then burned again. But I kept moving. It was still dark when I saw the cabin. Smoke curled from the chimney. I stopped at the gate, hand on the frozen wood. Then I knocked. It took a moment, then the porch light flicked on. The door opened, and there he was, Elias West, 70-something, gray beard, flannel shirt, eyes still sharp as nails. He looked at me for a long second. Then he stepped aside. "You're cold," he said. "Come in." I walked past him into the warmth. The house smelled like cedar and burnt coffee. A fire cracked low in the brick stove. The place hadn't changed. Still the same dark wooden beams, the same old recliner, the same stack of yellowing field journals on the side table. "You're limping," he said. "I lost the leg 3 years ago." He nodded once. I figured. We sat in silence for a while. He didn't ask why I was there. He didn't ask what happened. He just poured me a cup of black coffee and handed it to me. I held it like it was a lifeline. "I got thrown out," I said finally. He didn't look surprised, just nodded again. "I figured," he said. "I didn't know where else to go." "You came to the right place." That was it. No speeches, no pity, no advice, just fire, coffee, and a place to sit that didn't feel like I was in the way. I looked at him. "You still keep bees?" He smiled faintly. "Out back, 40 hives now. The girls are sleeping through winter, but come spring." He trailed off. I set the cup down. "I can help if you want." He leaned back in his chair, looked at me like he was measuring something. Then he said, "We'll start in the morning." And for the first time in a long, long time, I exhaled. The sun broke over the trees in cold gold light, and I stood on the porch, breath thick in the air, my crutch leaning against the railing. The snow behind the cabin stretched out to the tree line, quiet and undisturbed, except for the narrow path Elias had shoveled yesterday. It led to a line of wooden boxes, barely visible under snow covers. The hives, he was already out there, no coat, just flannel and boots, moving slow but steady. The man didn't walk, he flowed. I followed, every step jarring through my thigh and into the metal that now held me upright. He didn't say, "Good morning," just pointed at a pair of gloves hanging from a post. "We don't bother them in winter," he said, "but you still check. Airflow, moisture, listen for hum." I nodded like I understood. We moved from box to box. I watched him place a stethoscope against the side of each hive. He closed his eyes and listened. He handed it to me. "Go on." I pressed it to the side of the first box. For a second, Nothing. Then, low and deep, like a whisper in the dark, the hum of life. Thousands of bees huddled together in warmth, vibrating their wings to keep the queen alive. I pulled the stethoscope away. "They're alive," I said. He looked at me. "They know how to survive, they just need space and time." We worked in silence. It wasn't awkward, it was clean. The kind of quiet that doesn't demand anything from you. After we checked the last box, we sat on 2 overturned crates near the shed. He lit a pipe, didn't offer me one, just puffed, slow. "So," he said finally, "want to tell me why you really showed up?" I looked down at my hands. The knuckles still cracked from the dry air. One of my fingers barely bent all the way anymore. Nerve damage. I told him everything. The dinner, the words, the silence, my mother's clean disapproval, Tyler's hesitation, the walkout, the bus, the snow. He didn't interrupt. When I finished, he tapped his pipe on the crate and looked at me. "You expected them to love you for surviving," he said. "But they don't know what surviving costs." I didn't respond. He leaned back. "People like your father, they measure worth in motion. If you're not moving, earning, producing, you're a weight to them, a threat to the system." I lost a leg for them. I know. I gave them everything I had. He nodded slowly. "And that's why they can't look at you now, because you remind them what they never gave back." The wind picked up. Cold whipped across the clearing. I didn't flinch. Later that day, we cracked open a honey jar from last fall. He gave me a spoonful, thick, golden, sharp on the tongue. Nothing like store-bought. "I bottle truth," he said. "Real honey stings, like the good kind of memory." That night, I sat by the fire and stared into the flames. My phone stayed off. My body hurt, my knee, my shoulder, my pride, but something else was settling, not peace, not yet. Stillness, like the hum of a hive, buried under snow, waiting for spring. The nightmares didn't wait long. They came the third night, not with gunfire or explosions. Those stopped years ago. What came now was quieter, more brutal. A hallway, a door. My father's voice over and over. "You're a burden. You're a burden. You're a burden." I woke up, drenched in sweat, breath caught in my throat. The cabin was dark except for the fire, glowing low in the stove like an old wound. I sat up slowly, Crutch already beside the bed, like Elias knew this would happen. I gripped it tight and limped out to the main room. He was there, in his chair, awake. "You get those a lot?" he asked, not looking at me. "Sometimes." "You need quiet or you need noise?" Silence. He nodded. I sat in the armchair opposite his. The room creaked with winter. "You ever talk to someone about it?" he asked after a long minute. "Military therapist. He said I was stable." "Are you?" "No." "Good means you're honest." He stood, walked to the kitchen, poured 2 glasses of something brown. Whiskey, no ice, no ceremony. He handed me one. "To still being here," he said. I drank. It burned. I didn't sleep the rest of the night, just stared at the fire until it stopped glowing. The next morning, I was outside before he was. The hives stood quiet in their rows. Snow had drifted against the north side of each box. I brushed it off with my gloved hand, carefully, like I was touching something sacred. That day, we cleaned out the shed, old smoker cans, spare frames, a rusted extractor machine that coughed to life after Elias kicked it twice. At lunch, he made soup, thick, salty, full of whatever was in the pantry. We didn't talk about the night. He didn't ask if I was okay. That was the first kindness. Later, while chopping wood, I felt the cramp. The pain shot up through the prosthetic, across the socket into the bone that wasn't there anymore. I dropped the axe and stumbled. Elias was there in seconds. Sit. He didn't hover. Just watched while I sat on the porch step, jaw clenched, breath shaking. Phantom? I nodded. He reached into his coat, pulled out a small tin, handed it to me. Menthol and beeswax, he said. Rub it on. Doesn't fix it, but helps. I did. It did. You don't ask many questions, I said finally. I only ask if I need the answer. He pulled out his pipe, lit it with a match, and stared out at the trees. You think they'll ever call? I asked. Do you want them to? I didn't answer. He puffed once, twice. You don't need their apology, he said. You need your own permission, to stop living for their version of you. I looked at the hives. They ever sting you? He smirked. Every season, but it's not personal. It's just protection. Even the smallest creature wants to feel safe. That stuck with me. That night I slept without waking up. No fire, no whiskey. Just the deep, dreamless dark of a man finally starting to come back to himself. Spring came slow. The snow melted first in strips, lines of earth peeking through like old scars. Then the ice on the shed roof let go one chunk at a time, thudding into the ground. By March, the air smelled different, like something waiting to be born, and the bees woke up. You could hear it, soft at first, then steady, a low hum across the field, vibrating through the wood. The kind of sound that doesn't ask for attention, but earns it. We started working every day. Elias taught me how to check frames, how to read the combs, how to move with your hands steady and your thoughts slower. Bees, he said, don't like panic. You come at them nervous, they'll sting, not out of hate, out of instinct. That's nature's honesty. I learned quick. My body wasn't the same. I couldn't kneel like before, couldn't carry weight the same way. But I found rhythm, learned when to push and when to stop. One morning, I said, I could build a new frame, set up, stack vertical, save space. Elias didn't smile. He just said, then build it. So I did. We drove into town, bought wood and netting. I spent 2 days sketching and cutting and drilling. The result wasn't pretty, but it worked, saved space, easier to inspect. He nodded once. Not bad. That was his version of praise. At night, I started taking pictures, not of me, of the bees, the combs, the light hitting honey like gold poured from the sky. I posted a few online, thought nothing of it. People noticed. Then I posted a video, me opening a hive, explaining how bees self-regulate heat, showing the queen's slow movement across a fresh frame. It got shared, then reshared. Messages came in. Where can I buy your honey? Do you ship? Your story saved me today. That last one made me stop. I showed Elias the account one evening. He watched the video all the way through, then handed the phone back. You want to sell it? He asked. Could try. We need better jars. He stood up, walked into the back room, and came out with a crate of old mason jars. Labels yours to design. That week we printed stickers, West Apiary Raw, local, honest. We sold out the first 2 batches. The next month we doubled production. By summer we were shipping statewide. I didn't tell my family, I didn't send them a link. I didn't need to, because this wasn't revenge. It was proof that I could build something from the ground up, that I didn't need a place at their table, I could make my own, and it tasted better with honey. They showed up in July. I was in the shed boxing orders. Sweat down my back, a jar in each hand, label roll stuck to my shirt. I heard the tires on gravel before I saw the car. SUV, too clean for this road. Elias stepped outside first. He didn't say anything, just stood there, arms crossed, watching the door open. My father got out, then my mother. They looked smaller than I remembered, or maybe I was just finally standing still. I came out, wiped my hands on a rag. The heat made everything sharper. Their clothes looked too pressed, too tidy, out of place among the dust and honey and sunburnt wood. "Noah," my mom said. I didn't speak. She smiled, like this was a pleasant visit. We saw the website. A co-worker forwarded it. My father stood behind her, hands in his pockets, mouth tight. "You've done well," he said. It sounded like a question. I nodded once. "I know." There was a pause. Then my mom stepped forward. "We just wanted to talk, to see how you've been, maybe reconnect." Elias let out a short breath. It almost sounded like a laugh. "You kicked me out on Christmas," I said. "Remember that?" Her smile faltered. "That's not fair. It's exactly fair." "We didn't mean yes," I said. "You did." My father shifted his stance. "We were under stress. You weren't contributing. It was a hard time." "You think this was easy for me?" I asked. "You think I came home whole?" He looked at Elias. "Could we talk in private?" Elias didn't move. "You're on my land. You speak where I say." They stood there, two people dressed for a brunch they weren't invited to. "You called me a burden," I said, "and then you moved on. You thought I'd crawl back when I had something to show for myself." "Noah, we're trying." "No, you're circling the hive because you think the honey's worth it now." My mom's eyes filled with tears, not the loud kind, the performance kind. My father stepped in. "We're still your family." "No," I said. "Family doesn't throw you away when you stop producing." Elias spoke up then. "You said your piece, now go." My father opened his mouth. Elias raised a hand. "I buried my wife on this land. I'll bury whatever dignity you have left if you don't leave." Silence. Then the car doors, then tires on gravel again. I stood there, hands shaking, not from anger, from how much I didn't feel anymore. Elias turned to me. "You good?" I nodded. "Yeah." He walked back inside. I stayed on the porch a little longer, the sun baking into my shoulders, the scent of wildflowers rising from the field. They came looking for control. They left with the truth. And I didn't owe them a damn thing. He came alone. Late August. Bees in full swing. Sun like fire on the back of my neck. I was bottling fresh harvest when I heard the knock on the shed frame. Soft, hesitant. I turned. Tyler, jeans, t-shirt, no suitcase. Just him. Older than I remembered. Or maybe just tired. He held a six-pack of cheap beer like it was an apology. "Hey," he said. I didn't answer. Just looked at him. He shifted his weight, scuffed his shoe in the dirt. "I should have said something that night," he said. "I should have stood up." I went back to sealing jars, let the silence stretch until it felt honest. "I didn't know what to do," he said. I capped another lid. "You knew what not to do." He nodded. "Fair." Elias walked by with a stack of empty supers. He paused just long enough to glance at Tyler, then kept moving. "You came a long way," I said finally. He shrugged. I kept seeing the posts, the orders, the name on the label. "I figured if you could do all that without us, maybe you didn't need me either." "I didn't," he exhaled, "but I came anyway." We didn't talk for a while after that. He just sat on the step cracking a beer, watching me work. I let him. It wasn't forgiveness, it was space. The next morning he was still there. Slept in the truck, apparently. "Need help?" he asked. I handed him gloves. "You know how to build frames? Show me." So I did. We worked in rhythm, not like brothers, not yet, just two men who'd been to the same fire and left with different burns. That week, he fixed the fence, cleaned the old smoker, learned to feed the bees without agitating them. He didn't talk much, just moved steady, reliable, like he wanted to earn each hour. One night, we sat by the fire pit. Elias had gone in, stars above us, whiskey between us. "I didn't come to get something," Tyler said. "I came because I couldn't carry the silence anymore." I sipped slow. "You want a cut of the business?" I want a shovel. I want to build. That was the first thing he said that sounded real. By September, we were producing double. Orders from 3 states, then 5. We added new hives, started working on a tasting room. People came out to see us, tour the land, hear the story, not the dramatic version. The quiet one, about healing, about bees, about silence that doesn't hurt. One afternoon, I saw Tyler talking to a woman near the hives. She asked about the queen. He explained with a gentleness I didn't expect. She laughed. He smiled. After she left, he walked over. "You ever think we'd end up here?" he asked. "Not once." He nodded. Me neither. Then he grabbed the smoker and got back to work. Family isn't who you're born to. Sometimes it's who shows up late and stays. The air smelled like honey and pine. October came soft, golden, slow. The hives buzzed low, steady, like a heartbeat beneath the land. Bees moved in and out like clockwork. No panic, no rush, just the rhythm of something built right. We finished the last batch of the season. Jarred, labeled, stacked in neat rows inside the new storage shed Tyler helped frame. He carved a small sign to hang above the door. Coleman Honey. Then scratched it out and wrote, West Apiary. He didn't ask. He didn't need to. Elias saw it, said nothing. Just nodded once and walked inside. That night we had dinner by the fire. Elias made stew. Tyler brought bread from town. I poured 2-finger bourbon into 3 chipped mugs. No toasts, no speeches. Just clinking glass and the sound of logs shifting in the pit. "I'm updating the website," Tyler said. "Adding a page for donations. People keep asking how to support veterans." "Don't make it about me," I said. He shook his head. "It's not. It's about them. You just happen to be the proof." The next morning, I woke early. Walked out to the field alone. Cold bit at my fingers. Fog crawled low across the grass. I stood in front of the hives and listened. The hum was still there. I pulled my phone out, opened the inbox, hundreds of unread messages. Some from strangers, some from names I recognized. One was from a woman named Ruth, Alabama. Husband lost his leg last year, said my story got him out of bed. One was from a guy in Nebraska, said he hadn't talked to his brother in 5 years, until he read my post about Tyler. Another from a soldier's mother. Just 2 words. "Thank you." I set the phone down and breathed in slow. I wasn't healed, but I wasn't broken either. Later that week, a man from the local paper came by. Wanted to write about the farm, said the story was inspiring, that the whole town was talking. "What do you want to say to people?" he asked, holding a tiny recorder in one hand. I thought about it. Then I said, "You don't need their table. Build your own. Fill it with people who bring peace, not noise." He wrote that down. When the piece came out, it spread, statewide, then national. The orders exploded. We hired 2 veterans from the area, trained them, gave them keys to cabins nearby, started something bigger than jars and labels. We called it the Hive Program. Not a charity, not a story, a second chance. And through all of it, Elias stayed the same. Quiet, present, watching the world come to us without ever needing to raise his voice. One evening, I caught him staring out at the bees, pipe in hand, face unreadable. "What are you thinking?" I asked. He puffed once. Never thought I'd see a name worth keeping put back on this land. You kept it alive. He looked at me. No, he said, you did. He died that winter, peacefully, in his sleep. No drama, just silence. We buried him on the ridge above the hives. Spring came again. The bees woke up, and I kept going. This time, not for anyone else, just because it mattered.